Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The House of Representatives rejected a war powers resolution to rein in President Trump's ability to wage war against Iran. 4 House Democrats joined nearly every Republican as the measure narrowly failed on a vote of 212 to 219. The vote came as the U.S. and Israel intensifies bomb attacks across Iran, and one day after the Senate similarly rejected a war powers resolution. Just 2 Republicans voted in favor of the House war powers resolution. This is its co-sponsor, Kentucky Republican Congressmember Thomas Massie.
The president says we had to strike first because an Iranian strike was imminent. Meanwhile, the Department of Defense conceded there was no evidence of an imminent Iranian strike. Some told us this war was about nuclear weapons, but 6 months ago, we were assured our last strike on Iran decimated their nuclear program. So which is it? I think the most candid answer came from the Secretary of State, who told the press that Israel forced our hand and dragged us into this war again. And that truth is the very reason why it is Congress that must decide war.
In Iran, massive explosions shook the capital, Tehran, overnight as the city's 10 million residents endured the most intense night of bombing since the U.S. and Israel launched a joint attack Saturday. There were airstrikes reported near Tehran University, on an Iranian military academy, on government buildings and on civilian sites, including residential buildings, car parks, and gas stations. Iran says more than 3,600 civilian sites across the country have been damaged in U.S.-Israeli attacks, including ambulances and 24 medical facilities. Among the dead, according to Iran state media, 20 people killed and 30 injured in an attack on a residential area in the city of Shiraz. Meanwhile, Sri Lankan officials have evacuated more than 200 sailors from a second Iranian Navy ship off Sri Lanka's coast. The evacuation came after a U.S. submarine fired a torpedo to sink an Iranian frigate that was unarmed and in international waters, killing 87 people. On Thursday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said Iran is making a mistake if it believes the United States cannot sustain the war indefinitely.
We've got no shortage of munitions. Our stockpiles of defensive and offensive weapons allow us to sustain this campaign as long as we need to. We have only just begun to fight, and fight decisively.
Politico reports U.S. Central Command asked the Pentagon to send more military intelligence officers to its Florida headquarters to support operations against Iran for at least 100 days and likely through September. The Center for Strategic and International Studies reports the first 100 hours of U.S. attacks alone cost $3.7 billion. On Thursday, President Trump told Axios in an interview he needs to be personally involved in selecting Iran's next leader, just as he was in Venezuela. Axios reports Trump acknowledged Mojtaba Khamenei, son of the assassinated Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, as the most likely successor, while making clear he finds that outcome unacceptable. Iran is continuing to fire retaliatory missiles and drones at Israel and nations across the Middle East that host U.S. military bases. Iranian missiles crashed down across Tel Aviv earlier today, sparking a fire and damaging several buildings, though no injuries were reported. One missile reportedly struck near Ben Gurion Airport, which hosts U.S. aerial refueling tankers used in the war in Iran. In Iraq, a drone struck an airfield operated by a U.S. firm in the northern Kurdish region, causing a fire. Officials in Bahrain say an oil refinery fire from an Iranian missile strike has been contained. Meanwhile, Qatar has fully shut down natural gas liquefaction and won't be able to start operations for at least a month, adding to a growing energy crisis caused by the U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran. On Thursday, U.S. stocks dropped dramatically, with the Dow falling nearly 800 points as oil prices made their largest weekly gain and the highest since President Trump took office, the highest weekly gain since 2020. Lebanon's health ministry reports 123 people have been killed and 683 wounded since Israel began massive wave of attacks across much of Lebanon Monday. Among the dead are a 5-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy killed when the Israeli army raided their home in the town of Mashkara. Over the past 24 hours, Israeli jets bombed southern and eastern Lebanese towns and southern suburbs of the capital, Beirut, after threatening residents to leave their homes or face death. On Thursday, Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich said that all of Beirut's southern suburbs will face devastation similar to Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip, which the Israeli military reduced to rubble.
We are now on the northern border after the IDF instructed all residents of the area to evacuate. You wanted to bring hell upon us? You brought hell upon yourselves. The Dahya will look like Khan Yunis. Our northern residents will live in quiet, peace, and security.
In the Gaza Strip, the World Health Organization warns stocks of essential medicines, trauma, and surgical supplies are running critically low, along with fuel needed to power medical equipment. The crisis exacerbated after Israel closed all border crossings in Gaza as it launched attacks on Iran Saturday. The Kerem Shalom crossing has since partially reopened, but most crossings remain shut. This is Amjad al-Shawa, head of the Palestinian non-governmental organizations network in Gaza.
If the crossings remain closed and aid in all its forms is not allowed in, whether medical, food, shelter supplies, and other basic necessities for Palestinian citizens, at the forefront of the water sector and the maintenance of water networks, we will be facing a dangerous situation and a return to famine, maybe in a form worse than before.
Kristi Noem has been ousted from her position as Homeland Security Secretary. On Thursday, President Trump announced on social media he was firing Noem and replacing her with Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma. Mullin's an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation. Noem had faced intensifying calls to resign or be impeached over her disastrous handling of Trump's immigration raids nationwide and the unchecked violent use of force by her federal agents, leading to the fatal shootings of at least 4 people, including U.S. citizens Renee Good and Alex Preti in Minneapolis, which Noem then falsely labeled. She labeled them as domestic terrorists. Noem was also widely accused of corruption. Last year, she was photographed wearing a gold Rolex Cosmograph Daytona that sells for about $50,000 as she toured El Salvador's notorious Secat megaprison, where Trump had deported hundreds of Venezuelan immigrants. She posed in front of an overcrowded cell where dozens of men imprisoned at Secat were seen wearing nothing but white shorts. Noem also oversaw a multi-million-dollar self-promotional DHS advertising campaign. Trump told Reuters in an exclusive interview Thursday he hadn't signed off on the $220 million campaign. We'll have more on Noem's ouster later in the broadcast. This all comes as the Department of Homeland Security remains under a partial shutdown after Senate Democrats blocked a Republican-led bill to fund DHS. Noem's firing was announced shortly before the vote. Earlier, Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut had reportedly said, quote, "It might be easier for us to negotiate on DHS funding if Noem was fired." In Tennessee, a local Nashville journalist whose stories have been critical of ICE was arrested and detained by federal agents earlier this week. Estefania Maria Rodriguez Flores, with the news outlet Nashville Noticias, was reportedly taken during a traffic stop on Wednesday, despite the federal agents not having an arrest warrant. The Tennessean reported Rodriguez Flores is from Colombia, has lived in the U.S. since 2021 with a tourist visa and work permit as pending green card and asylum applications. She's also married to a U.S. citizen. In South Sudan, at least 169 people were killed after dozens of armed assailants attacked a town near the border with Sudan. Victims included government soldiers and nearly 100 civilians, with women and children among the dead. A UN mission said it was sheltering more than 1,000 civilians who fled the violence. A local official said the attackers were fighters aligned with Riek Machar, one of 2 rivals for control of South Sudan during the 5-year civil war that officially ended in 2018 after an estimated 400,000 people died from the fighting. Meanwhile, the medical charity Doctors Without Borders says 26 of its workers remain unaccounted for a month after they fled attacks on 2 medical facilities in South Sudan's Jonglei state. In the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, more than 200 people were killed after heavy rains triggered a landslide at a major coltan mining site. About 70 children were reportedly among the victims. The Rubaya mines are controlled by the M23 rebel group, which disputed the government's death toll, claiming there had been a bombing at the mining site and that only 5 people were killed. Al Jazeera reports the Rubaya mine produces about 15% of the world's coltan, an essential metal that's processed into tantalum to manufacture smartphones, electric car batteries, and other devices. Child labor is rife at the mines, with workers facing what's been described as modern-day slavery conditions. And the civil rights pioneer Bernard Lafayette, who joined freedom rides and fought for voting rights in the Jim Crow South, has died at the age of 85. In the 1960s, Lafayette was a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He later became a faculty member at Auburn University in Alabama, where he lectured on nonviolent social change. Democracy Now! Last spoke to Bernard Lafayette in 2020, when he described how a white mob beat freedom riders, including Jim Zwerg and John Lewis, at a Greyhound bus station in Montgomery, Alabama, in May 1961, as they were protesting segregated interstate travel.
Once we got to the bus station, all of the protection disappeared, and we were on the platform, and Jim Zwerg was beaten up, and John Lewis was clobbered, and I got kicked in the chest and had 3 broken ribs. So there was nothing you could do with broken ribs. So I went through the entire freedom rides with 3 broken ribs. I didn't tell my fellow freedom riders because they might have insisted that I not go. So I just kept quiet. I quietly suffered the entire trip.
Bernard Lafayette was 85 years old. And in Chicago today, family and friends of the Reverend Jesse Jackson are gathering for a memorial service celebrating the life and of the late civil rights leader who died in February at the age of 84. The service is open to the public. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York with Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.